Hello. Hey y'all. So listen, I am not in my regular reading spot and I'm not on my laptop. I'm just going live from my phone. I'm not on StreamYards. I decided not to go on StreamYards tonight because I'm sure they made some changes and it's just going to take me a while to get everything right because they don't know how to keep things the same for a little while. So that means there won't be no music. It'll just be me straight reading. And yeah, I'm trying to get it done. Because I got another book I want to read, believe it or not. And yeah, life has been lifing. But I turned 58 today. And things are starting to slow down in terms of how busy I've been. So, hey, Tony, I just trying to get back to consistency with reading to you guys. But it's been a crazy several months. But nevertheless, I am here. It's close to midnight, but I was determined to read before this weekend went out. So we are at chapter 14, titled Beginning of the End. And last we left off, he had called Hazel and the help answered the phone and told him to hold on and took like 5 minutes before she came back. And she was like, Hazel wants to know what you want. And that kind of crushed him a little bit. It kind of crushed him a little bit. And that's when he realized things have changed with MOTOWN. He thought Hazel and Jermaine were friends. And they were just basically all about business. So chapter 14, beginning of the end. There's a picture here, and I promise you, I'm going to make a specific video flipping through this book so you can see all the pictures I've been talking about. I usually do that. All right, so there's a picture here, and it says switch promo pic number 4. It's a picture of them as a group, I guess, for an album cover or whatever. They pretty much is all good-looking men. I immediately noticed, is his name Phil? James Ingram's brother? Because he looks just like James Ingram. Rest in peace, James. I don't know if Phil is still with us. But, yeah. And then, like, the top center is Bobby. Bobby is cute. And he doesn't look, well, we ought to think a man with wearing his hair like this is gay. But he doesn't look gay. You know how they used to do in the 70s, especially if he was light skinned. You couldn't help but have pretty hair and wear it pretty. But you look at this picture, you be like, yeah, I wouldn't think he was gay. You know what's different these days before I begin? I don't know how old you are, but I'm 58. And even if you look at the old bands, their album covers from the 70s and the 60s, when they were showing their chest, men used to have a lot of hair on their chest back in the day. These days, men don't have hair on their chest. What is that about? Have you noticed that? Take a look, flip back and, look at old groups and stuff. They had hairy chests. Every man just about had hair on their chest. These days, it's very rare to see a black man with hair on their chest. Are they shaving their chests? I don't think so. I just think something has happened biologically with the environment that men no longer grow hair on their chest. Now, come back, do your observations and all that stuff, and come back and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Anyway, early on, Jermaine, Hazel, and Switch had been very close, always communicating, and they were available or quick to get back when I called because they knew that I kept my calling infrequent and limited to pertinent issues versus random, frivolous phone calling. In turn, I quickly responded when they called or left a message for me, no matter the time, but that was then, and suddenly no more. The communication between us had abruptly and without warning shut down. Various things in my life had also changed drastically over these past few short years. I remember getting antsy about things, and I moved in and out of 5 apartments in a 3-year time frame. Although I kept my personal and business fronts up, still responsible enough to book and get to the studios on time, keeping my work ethic together, maintaining relationships with the few women I allowed in my life, always well groomed and not exposed in my drug induced shortcomings. I had a growing addiction and I knew it, even if it was not on display to the rest of the world. Another long ass damn sentence. Hello, Roscoe. Welcome. I was also feeling the lethargy of Bobby's constant psychotic behavior. Hey, Leah. Would I rather have a black neighbor or a Mexican neighbor? I don't care what kind of neighbor they are, other than the fact that they're not thugs and criminals and serial killers and pedophiles. If they're decent people, I don't care whether they're black or Mexican. I grew up with Mexican people, a lot of Hispanic people, and we were all like family. But that's New York for you. I see other places of the world, it ain't the same. I was also feeling the lethargy of Bobby's constant psychotic behavior. MOTOWN's games, Jermaine and Hazel's abandonment while still accepting payment, and my stress over having a good band who, due to MOTOWN's self-serving plans, was still unable to tour or play live. I felt this life was strangling me. Once my abuse of drugs became obvious to me, and at the very least my bandmates, I would tell myself and them I was going to leave the drug alone. I could and did not, I could and did stop for days, even weeks at a time, but surely returned to the scene of the crime before long, which was easy to do when at almost every turn a pipe awaits. Other than switching my music during this time, the world I lived in was mostly comprised of people who partied and smoked. Do you think Jermaine and Hazel knew that, he was drugging it too? Because if they knew that, and, if you freebasing, come on. It's, only a basehead would think that they baseheading and nobody knows but them. So they probably, knew about Bobby, knew about Tommy, knew about Greg and a couple of other, and they was like, you know what, they all baseheads. Ain't nobody got time for that. So from that standpoint, if they gave him the cold shoulder, I understand. I had only a few non-industry friends to hang out with. We're not working, but most of my folks were industry insiders who liked to party. If not with one of my girls, my family, Switch or Rick James, there was a limited few which I would hang with. Now, you hanging with Rick James, you going to be getting high. Point blank, period. I'd sometimes go to Paramount Recording Studio on Santa Monica and hang with my friend Johnny Guitar Watson. Most times his mother would have cooked and brought these huge dinners, including collard greens with big old ham hocks, fried chicken, mac and cheese, candied yams, potato salad, fried okra, sweet potato pie, and other things her baby Johnny loved. There was always enough food to feed a basketball team. Oh, Johnny's mama liked to cook, huh? Johnny would say, Greg, you know mama cooked for all of us. But John, who knew I was coming today? I asked. Shit, nigga, I knew you was coming. What else you was gonna do? Either go to your studio or mine. Now eat, motherfucker, before I tell mama that you don't like her food. Oh. We both burst out into laughter as he'd shake his head until that gangster hat would almost fall off and his gold teeth would catch an overhead light and light up the room like a spotlight. I and whoever else was there would fix a plate, eat, and we'd all talk shit while hearing the tracks Johnny was laying. Later, we would slip into the vocal booth, lock the door, and light up the pipe. Often it was on at his house in the San Fernando Valley, where he lived with his woman Sasha. At the parties, which he threw frequently, would be a dozen or more famous and non-famous folk who would just hang out, eating, drinking, talking, smoking weed. Since he had a home studio filled with musical equipment, sometimes we'd have a jam session. After a while, John would call out a few of us and we would go into his special room, a converted bathroom, just for smoking, which he called Base Station 1. Mm, mm, mm. Base Station 1. The invitees would sit around, fire up, pass the pipe, and joke, beam me up, Scotty, a line from Star Trek, where we take a hit and fly for a while, then rejoin the rest of the folks. And although this was a typical party scene among various celebrities at this time, I somehow remained selective as to where and with whom I would expose my freebase use. With Hollywood entertainers forever being accused of all sorts of truth and madness, I maintained enough restraint to keep my getting high down to assumption and minor rumor versus eyewitness fact. And I also knew that other than minimal gossip and unjust speculation of Switch as a whole, my problem with cocaine was mine to assess and scrutinize because at that time it bore no outward signs. I don't believe him. I don't believe him. After those early weeks of spending money with Roscoe, just under $1,000, I found out that my girlfriend's neighbor, Charlie, sold cocaine. I learned that he too knew how to cook up freebase, so right after he and I met, I proposed that if I spent my money with him, he would teach me how to do it. His method was different than Roscoe's. From that point, I was doing it for myself and sometimes for others. As time went on, I began to smoke nearly every day. I still managed to maintain priorities, such as always handling my commitments and responsibilities for and with Switch and to myself, i.e. meetings, sessions, rehearsals, etc. I was always prompt in paying bills and maintaining my home. Personal grooming remained at a first and foremost daily responsibility, and even making time for intimate personal relationships with my girlfriend and other women close to me. But I still made time to get high. So he was a functional addict. I identified and accepted the fact that addiction was really upon me when I found out that I'd smoked before I went to and infrequently at parties. I'd smoke around a few select folk and at their homes, but more so, I'd smoke by myself at my home. I got it down to a point that I would hit the pipe before leaving home for the studio for rehearsal, and lastly, I brought freebase with me and would hit it on break. In the initial stages of my use, my then girlfriend and I would infrequently hit the pipe together, but after a few times we backed away, trying an effort to maintain our restraint from any kind of abuse or addiction. From what I know, this worked for Kathy, but not too well for me. I had money and access, so I continued with sporadic use for a time longer. Strangely enough, smoking together was short lived with Mary and me too, as I began to realize that whether I hit that pipe or not, I really didn't want my woman to do that. Throughout my life, I never cared for women who were too loose, women who hung out too much, those who drank, smoked, cursed, flirted, and partied too much. I really didn't have much energy for, as I was not raised around, nor could I respect that kind of woman. And here I am now in a world of sex, drugs, and R&B music. I later came to know that my views and expectations of women were misguided and too high for most of the women I allowed in life. I often tried to maintain some kind of short-term relationship, but from Valerie to now, no one got to hang out too long. Not my conscious intent, but my undeniable reality, because in reality, music was my lady. He said music was his lady. I think he's misguided here. I think freebase was his lady at this particular point in time. In my freebase days after Kathy and Mary, if there was a woman I was seeing, I wouldn't accept her or let her smoke because I wanted someone straight in my life, not someone with a vice like I developed. Someone who could straight talk and help me if I went too far. Freebase, as with most cocaine-based drugs, is an instant aphrodisiac to most folk. I recall more than one time I let a female friend do coke in my presence, and their hands were all over me. One in particular helped me break the cycle of getting high around women. I eased her off me. Wait, I'm high now and I need to come down. Greg, you have got to do something because my stuff is on fire. I relented and decided I'd stick with my decision not to smoke with a woman because for me, smoking and making love didn't mix. The desire is there, and most men stay ready for whatever comes, while many other men's equipment, such as mine, doesn't work while using cocaine or freebase. I had become a basehead. Duh. Yes, I was frequently chasing Jason, as some folks said of freebase addicts during that time. But somehow, as throughout my life, my conscience, my humility, my pride, my self-worth would not allow me to completely lose myself to that cigarette, that drug, that woman, that money, this music business, or anything else but the radio that constantly played in my head. By now, I'm moving away from getting high outside of my home and only with a select few folks, as with each hit, I grew more and more paranoid. In this state, I would think that someone was watching me get high. I would become intensely self-conscious about what I was doing, knowing it was wrong and so out of character for me, and due to its present hold on me, a total threat to my health, my dreams, my life, but unable to stop myself from seeking hit after hit from the pipe. I noticed the effect freebase was having on Bobby and Tommy. Through my observation of Bobby, it was clear that the combination of the small amount of fame and the drugs unleashed the side of him I dreaded, but knew would be coming. And poor Tommy just became increasingly lost to the pipe and whatever drug he can get his hands on, And though my drug use was not so overt, it was time for me to take a long, hard look at Greg also. Now, in the mid to later stages of my drug abuse, I dated Vanita, a fine sister who worked in the sales department at MOTOWN. Without providing information about the inner workings of MOTOWN as it pertained to Switch and my career as an artist there, she would enlighten me and keep me abreast of what was going on around and about me, the person. She was the only person to speak to me frankly about everything. I came to know and trust her with what, in my mind, had now become my secret. I exposed her to the methods and frequency of my getting high from preparation to end result. After a year or more of use, I would take a hit and immediately sink deep into cocaine paranoia. First hit, and I'd go to the window to look out, thinking someone was watching me or coming. Greg, sit down, baby. There's no one out there. I sat down, still feeling jittery from the cocaine rush. Greg, you do this all the time now. I need to talk to you. My little cousin overheard some other people were saying you've become a basehead, and he asked me if it was true. That's not something you want people saying about you, Greg, because information like that can ruin your life. You have too much going for you to throw it away behind some drugs, Greg. You need to stop smoking. That others could see I had a problem took my sense of worth beneath the floor, and tears hung on the edge of my eyes. I thanked Vanita, knowing she spoke from love, but my continuance as a basehead created a growing distance between us until she was no longer there. I told you he was in his baseheaded mind. He was the only one to think that nobody else knew that he was a basehead. Tell you, cocaine is a hell of a drug. Being alone and coming down from yet another high, reality pressed itself into my face. I had always said my goal was to become a producer, writer, musician, and I had done just that. But my work was limited to Switch, MOTOWN, and instead of using my relationships and contacts to broaden my world, I spent my free time getting high. I'm sorry, I paused just now because these sentences. The band suffered from incubation, not being able to travel, and the drug world had forced Philip and Eddie, the most stable members of Switch, to become somewhat distant after studio hours. Good for them. Philip and I had been the closest from day one, sharing music and business ideas, personal thoughts, and information. When we lived in the Montague house, we got up early, ate breakfast, discussed everything daily, and even hung out a lot when the band wasn't practicing, meeting with Motown folk, or when we weren't hanging with our then girlfriends. Now, more than a year or so later, we moved together in yet another house, and I could see he noticed. Though I never missed a rehearsal nor a meeting, I wasn't as sharp as usual, and we stopped having long conversations like we used to. Yes, all six of us were moving on well into our new lives, while various tensions were rearing their ugly heads because of the many demands that Stardom, Motown, friends, and family intentionally and non-intentionally put upon us. Additional tension existed within the group after Jody had gone behind Philip's back and hooked up with Philip's girlfriend. Although each of us had dealt close relationships with more than one woman, certain women were known to each member of the band as special or girlfriends, and we had an unspoken understanding in this band, as with most bands. There were groupies who were for anyone who wanted to partake of them freely. However, spoken or unspoken girlfriends or even relationships which appeared serious were off limits and were to be respected at all times. This particular lady and her young children had captured Philip's heart, but that made no difference to Jody because what he saw and what he wanted, he went for. Well, Jody's actions did more damage than that of the girl because it broke a trust that could never be repaired. We were all angry about this and thought it was scandalous, as we could see how much it hurt Philip. Although I could not defend his actions when various friends would express disgust and or call him a snake, I did what I could to stop that kind of talk in my presence. From the night Jermaine and Hazel clarified that Switch had one leader, and that was me, I felt that Jody harbored resentment against me and became angry with everyone else. But in my mind, we were still brothers. We, by definition, were still a group. So I was obligated to protect Switch as a whole. I too thought the situation with the girl was an act of defiance against his ill-perceived feelings that band members had turned their backs on him. I also came to feel later that Jody was displeased about either being replaced on drums during the recordings by Bobby, which was done due to his problem in keeping the tempo steady. Jody was a good drummer and a fantastic showman. However, no matter how close Tommy stuck to him and tried to ground his time, attempting to keep it steady, he'd often speed up or slow down, and this was really noticeable on records. Live, we could adjust, and Tommy would be holding him down as best he could. But when recording, time is money, and as a producer, you have no choice but to hire the best musicians for the sound that you're hearing, which Bobby did. You know, it's the drummer that drives the band. I always wanted to get the work done as fast as possible, but under budget and wait. I always wanted to get the work done as fast as possible, be under budget, and get the best quality I could. And Switch members provided the sound I wanted and needed because Switch was the sound I was hearing. His actions brought him bad outcomes, and I could see Jody brooding, even though he kept his feelings inside. It was clear to me that he actually resented my being the leader. His emotions, especially for me, were shown when he'd sometimes stand with Bobby against my direction when it was clear to all that I was right and acting in the best interest of the band. But I would shrug them both off and continue my task when I knew I was right. These, among many other thoughts, were in heavy rotation in my head, along with my concerns about Bobby and Tommy, who had become more bizarre with drugs, tearing up their cars and apartments, having frequent run-ins with the law for one reason or another, and other self-destructive behavior. Poor Tommy was frequently getting pulled over for one traffic violation or another and saying to the officer trying to give him a warning, and in some cases, a ticket for some infraction. "Don't you know who I am?" As if that was going to get him a pass. And the policeman responding, "Yes, you're the guy I'm taking to jail." And off to jail he went. Of course, I get the call, and Upshaw was usually my go-to person to go and get Tommy and Bobby out of some of the messes they would find themselves in. With all this going on, the other band members were growing restless and tired of the DEBARGE bullshit, and I was still holding on to fragments of what once was Switch while we stood on the verge of imploding. It was like we were caught in a vacuum that was about to blow. Switch, on paper and on record, was a successful band, but no one had heard us live, and we hadn't gigged since playing with our former bands almost 5 years earlier. Wow. So in my mind, we were long overdue to hit the road if we ever were again. But life moved on, and each of us put forth all efforts to keep up and stay sane in the midst of our ever changing world. By now, family and friend migrations to California were well underway after the six of us had planted our individual and collective flags. The DeBarge siblings, as well as my brother, Art, had been back in LA for more than a year, and my Aunt Ruby packed up her 12-year-old daughter and their life, and my brother Skip drove their belongings out here from Grand Rapids. Philip's brother David had also moved here. Having family, new and old, so close brought both good and bad dynamics into play with Switch overall. Since coming to California, there had been various frequent dates, but of the girlfriends who meant more were Kathy, Mary, Vanita, and now Terry. And I remained happy that I and each of them was somehow able to avoid major negative fallout and walk away as friends. And that still stands till this day. Another year had come and quickly gone, and it was 1980. Time to start on our fourth album for Motown, which would come to be titled This Is My Dream. While Bobby and I remained estranged, Motown and the Temptations were not. In fact, there was much excitement. We were told that all living members had reunited and were coming back to Motown and would kick off their return with a reunion album. Folks who know anything about my musical history can easily imagine my thrill at the possibility of meeting the main group, whom I admired and emulated so well that my group, the Patterns, on talent shows copying them. Now, besides the work that Bobby, Jody, and I put in for this forthcoming album, as we began pulling together song possibilities, to our surprise and honor, even Berry Gordy worked with a team of songwriters and came up with a song he thought might work for Switch called Power. I immediately liked this song as it was reminiscent of the political songs of Marvin Gaye and Norman Whitfield in the early 1970s. This song was written with three vocalists in mind, which meant, like the song Fever on our first album, and Next to You and Falling on our second album, Bobby, Philip, and I would share lead vocals. Instead of calling us to play the song over the phone per usual, he held on to it, and in the midst of a production meeting at his home, the song was introduced and a demo was played along with the cassettes of our own few album ideas. Now, whether we thought the song was good, which I immediately did, or because it was written and presented to us by the chairman himself, Jody and I and the others showed an instant like to the song, but Bobby was clearly and blatantly disinterested, which came off offensively to all of us. After all of the possible songs played, the group members were given cassettes of Power to learn and record at a later date. With much more to discuss about this forthcoming album, the conversation moved on to other things as we continued to enjoy time at Mr. Gordy's Beverly Hills estate. In the limo ride to our cars that evening, other than a mention of a few events of the day by Tommy, which cracked all of us up, Bobby's blatant lack of enthusiasm or energy to the song was not even brought up then, but would be discussed the next day by individual group members. In subsequent project discussions with Mr. Gordy, Hazel, or Jermaine, it never came up again, as I'm sure Mr. Gordy was again offended and felt put off by Bobby shutting down and showing no love for the song or its creator. Over the next month or so, the recording process was fast, furious, and in full effect, with Bobby in one studio using studio musicians for his tracks and his recently arrived brothers and sister on vocals, while Philip and I worked closely in another. As Jody had stepped down as a producer by this time, due to song disputes with Lee Young Sr., who is now head of Motown's A&R department. As the album continued onwards towards completion, although there were no more production meetings, progress reports went back and forth between the album's current producers, including Jermaine Hazel and Mr. Gordy. In one of the many chats and inquiries, I remember asking Mr. Gordy when we were going to rehearse the song and go into the studio to record Power, but each time the answer was later. I knew that wasn't the truth, and I knew why. Berry Gordy was again allowed to feel Bobby's blatant disregard and disrespect, as with the time, Bobby abruptly told him that he would not even consider changing the lyrics to Power to Dance. It was the same disregard that I, Jermaine Hazel, all of Switch, and various others had endured many times over past years. One evening, in the midst of continuing on recording and producing songs for the album, I get a call from Mr. Gordy. It was once again a personal call, which of course led to us updating each other on what was being done for our project. As the updates were made and the conversation began to wear down, I brought up Power and asked what was happening with the song, when Mr. Gordy said, "Greg, you do know that the Temptations are back home with us?" "Yes, I know. Carol Cassano Ware asked me about writing and possibly producing songs for their forthcoming project. I was thinking about Power. Although we wrote this song for you guys, I think it might be a better song for the Temps reunion album. Actually, it fits them like a glove. What are your thoughts on that?" he asked. "I totally agree, Mr. Gordy. I'm honored that you would even bother to ask me." "Of course I would. Let's see what happens," he said. "I'm sure it'll be a smash with the Temptations," I said, as we concluded our chat and hung up. As I played our conversations back in my head, I was appreciative of his call and was glad to see this song go where I knew it would be sung, produced, and promoted properly. And considering that this came directly from the chairman's mouth to my ears after the way the song was ultimately treated by Bobby, I was happy for this outcome. It was now clear that he got and saw my initial effort at establishing a vocal style for Switch using multiple male vocalists, including first tenor, alto, and baritone/bass leads over moving harmonies, actually with the Temptations in mind. Although the record was getting done, the production on This Is My Dream was plagued by Bobby's and my diminished, if not totally non-existent communication with each other. This literally tore Switch in half, with Bobby on one side, me on the other, with Philip, Tommy, Jody, and Eddie caught in the middle. I opted to record in one studio, while Bobby insisted on working in another because we really needed to be away from each other if any resemblance of our friendship was to survive. And quite frankly, Bobby was so consumed by his own torment and self-destruction, it was clear he could care less what happened to me, Tommy, or anyone else, including himself. Wow. Wow. It was rapidly becoming clear to all outside of the group that Bobby's mental anguish, resulting from years of abuse and distrust, was now fully blown, causing him to consistently act erratically and insult me, other band members, Jermaine, Hazel, Berry Gordy, and anyone else who was in sight of his neurosis du jour. By now, he was constantly spreading his negative thoughts and energy, poisoning the group's efforts to work together and enjoy where life had brought us. And although outwardly angry, I was more so saddened due to his growing psychosis. saddened that I could no longer be the big brother that he once entrusted with much of his life, yet angry that I could no longer stand by, even if he'd let me, to calm his rough seas like I did when we were younger. I could no longer reach him or tolerate his intolerance. Between Bobby's issues, Jermaine and Hazel's random availability, all the business and personal roles and responsibilities that were either dumped on me or I had voluntarily assumed on behalf of Switch and Switch members, and my escalating drug use, outwardly I was in control. But mentally and emotionally, I was approaching a serious overload, of which only I identified and endured alone, because even in a crowd, I was alone. And although I've always had a woman somewhere in my life, I've become so consumed with the responsibility of trying to take care of my band and get us to the next level, I forgot how to let go and allow one woman in close enough to really love and help me take care of me. I was surrounded by women vying for my love, my attention, or even just a few minutes of my time. But the wall I had put up when I was 16, after suffering the heartbreak of losing Tracy, was too high and too wide for any one of them to get around thus far, except for Kathy. For her, that wall had come down, though, invisible to me. It had gone back up once she hurt me, too. I could love and make love with these women, buy them cards, flowers, and gifts. I could take them to movies, on trips, the theater, parties, and other social events. I could have them join me at the studios, play the piano and write songs for and with them, and even cook all kinds of dinners for them, which I really love to do. But I could not tear down the wall that kept each of these women from being my partner, my wife, the mother of my children, which the latter I so badly wanted, but would only have and accept under the right circumstances. I had a plan for my life, and as long as I was in control, I would live and die by that plan. I wish I knew then what I know now. The fact that life happens while you're busy making plans. So over these years, much of my life was spent like a small ship at sea with no port should storms arise, and ultimately they did arise. And if my world was not crazy enough, who should try to slip back into our lives through the back door but burned? He had somehow maintained the rights to the white heat masters he was given to end our joke of a business relationship. He was given, after releasing the songs on an album and an act called Hot Ice on Polygram Europe, through a deal he made with the Pall Mall Cigarette Company, he had somehow gotten them back. Now, Byrne resurfaced with a possible deal with Logan Westbrook and Source Records, and he needed musicians to make up the band on the record. So he recruited the DEBARGE family members. In no time, Elle, Marty, Randy DeBarge, and their cousins Andre Abney and Stanley Hood had moved to Cerritos, a suburb of LA, from Grand Rapids to become Byrne's group Smash and promote the album to be released on Source Records. And while they waited for work and money from the deal, instead of using Switch members, Bobby had his younger siblings in the studio doing harmony and backup vocals. On the other hand, I too was in the studio, recording and producing my songs totally separated from Bobby's sessions, through which the other Switch members could work and make additional money. I did not want or like this level of separation in my band, but at the very least, my sessions were prompt, productive, fun, and free of negative energy. That negative energy, which was now Bobby, seemed to interject far too frequently into everything Switch tried to do. As his drug use began to dominate his life, his phobias, psychosis, and self destructive behavior had taken greater control, and this made life harder to and for him and unbearable for Switch, with all of the problems that were continuing to surface in and for Switch, more so due to Bobby's extensive drug abuse, ego, paranoia, and negative outbursts. Life had become very tense for me, as I was always trying to think and act in the best interest of the band. Now, with Motown's denial of Bobby's request to go solo and my repeated request to allow him out of his commitment to Switch, our ship was quickly beginning to sink. As Switch moved forward into making the third album, I had been wearing Mr. Gordy's, Jermaine and Hazel's ears off about the problems Bobby was having and causing. In turn, I was told that Bobby was saying the same with reference to me and Switch. They had often asked me what was wrong with Bobby, why he was so difficult, angry, and aggressively determined to destroy himself. While having some answers to their concerns, I gave as much of an honest response as I could, leaving them to face the monster they had a big role in creating. I also knew, due to Bobby's lifelong psychosis, that monster would have reared its ugly head no matter what or who. Plus, in spite of all the damage Bobby had caused and left for me to deal with, I was somehow still caught in my lifelong futile effort to be loyal and protect him. I also know that they had tired of me questioning everything they did because though I cared about them as people, I'd stopped trusting them professionally long before this because it had become crystal clear when I learned of their underhanded attempt to remove Bobby and Tommy from the band that they didn't have my or Switch's best interests at heart. Because my management and record company were one and the same, I was at a loss as to how and when to properly end the management relationship as I knew I should. All of this troubled me immensely. I didn't know that Jermaine and Hazel would ultimately end the relationship before I had a chance to, simply by disappearing, or better yet, by making themselves totally inaccessible to Switch without warning. They just stopped working with us altogether. As I look back, the fucked up thing about it was they never said we quit. They never called a meeting to tell us they were done or how they had come to feel about being our managers. They never officially told us collectively or individually that they did not want to work with us anymore. They just stopped all communication, except to have Lee Young Jr. contact us to sign off on an agreement which allowed Motown to pay them a lump sum of money as management commissions for something I called an exit fee. They just left us out there to figure it out. And with all of the shit Bobby was putting us through, I really didn't care what they did since they weren't there to help solve the problems which they helped cause. Next thing I know, Shelley Berger gives me a call saying he is our new manager, which clearly sent the message Switch had been used up and dumped. I knew they had gotten tired, as I too had, of all the negative bullshit attached to Switch, or better yet, brought on by Bobby's uncaring, self-destructive antics, but imposed on Switch. But to just walk away without saying anything to any of us was really saying to all of us, fuck you. Well, Without them, Switch moved on, and Love Over and Over Again was released as our first single from This Is My Dream album. It rose to number 8 on the R&B charts, but even this song wouldn't cross over to the top 40 of the pop charts. All the same, it was another hit for Switch, giving us enough ammunition to win any argument about our finally going out on tour. I was finally free to engage a booking agent who arranged for us to go on our very first tour, headlined by the Barcades and Cameo. Well, all right. That is chapter 14. Perhaps I will surprise you before the weekend is out and get to chapter 15. Look, I will continue reading, but as I'm speaking to you now, chapter 15 is a long-ass chapter. Whew. It's like 50 pages in this one chapter. And I'm pooped. I had a hell of a day. A great, fantastic day, actually. And I'm just kind of pooped now. But I just made a promise that I was not going to let this Friday night go without me reading at least one chapter. All right, my darlings. Thank you all for tuning in. It is time for me to go. Hope you enjoy. Hello, Sarah and Tony. 2 more pages. Please. All right, let me think about it. I'm going to read through this chat. There's Tony. Hello, Tony. Roscoe. Leo and Kevin. I didn't have any moderators in here to block these people. Amari, hello. You like pancakes? You bet the toilet disappears when I sit on it. You got the wrong person. Two more pages. I tell you what, let's just chit-chat for a few minutes. Let me get some water, and I'll head on to chapter 15. Just hold on. Let me go get my water. Yeah, I'm back. Let me just sip some water and just take a little break before I start reading again. Is that all right with y'all? I hope so. Whew. Hey, James. How are you? Good to see you. You know, water is so good. And needed, especially what? I've been on for about an hour? Talking straight for an hour? 54 minutes? Yeah, I need a break, drink some water. So, let's talk about what's been going on in the world. Between me and you, I think Trump is going to be dead by October. I think the stress of this Epstein stuff is going to take him right out of this world. We will not have Trump for 4 years. We will have Vance, but he's nothing like Trump. I don't see him making the country any better, but at least I don't foresee it being stressful for the average citizen to live on a daily basis. I've been holding a lot of stuff in, and then on the other hand, I try not to pay attention to it, to Trump that is, and all his shenanigans. Because if I do, if I indulge myself, then I'm probably going to have to go into therapy. Not that there's something wrong with therapy. I mean, I'm a counselor, but I'm not going to let the 34-time convicted felon, rapist, criminal in office put me there. That's all I'm saying. Oh yeah, Tony. Watch. You're going to come back to this video in the comment section and you're going to be like, Madam Whip-Ass, you was right. You seen that nigga's feet and hand? His mental faculties aren't all there. He's out of here. And that, my dear, gives me some sort of comfort. It really does. Because the man is evil. He's a megalomaniac. And he cheated on this election. I know y'all have to know this. He did not get all of those votes that he got. I think Kamala Harris legitimately won the election. And you know how I know? Because last month, do you remember he had celebrated his birthday with the military army parade? You seen how empty those seats were? And the same day there was protests all over the country. And the people were packed in the streets like sardines against Trump. That was in a matter of 5 months of him winning the election. And I put winning the election in quotes. That just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to me. In 5 months prior, all these people, well, November, whatever, last November, more than half the country thought that Trump should be president. And then he has this birthday parade celebration and it's practically crickets. Meanwhile, protesters around the whole country, again, are packed in the streets like sardines. It just doesn't add up. The math ain't mathing. I'm almost done with my rant and drinking my water. Bear with me, because I'm getting ready to read chapter 15, which is about 50 pages. I think I owe it to y'all, and I think y'all deserve it. So if you just bear with me for a few more minutes, let me finish drinking my water and taking a break. And then there's that Vegas sector thing with Manny, who shot and killed a married couple by the name of Finney the Legend and Bubbly in front of the Bellagio water fountains out in Las Vegas. And maybe I shouldn't go there because I got a lot to say. And I think that might deserve its own video. But suffice it to say, and I said it before, weird shit. Weird as hell. And I'll just say one more thing concerning the Vegas sector. Be careful of people who always refer to themselves in the third person. You know what I mean by that? Just in case you don't. For example, if I sit here and talk and I say, because you know, Madam Whip-Ass, she just know for a fact that Trump gonna be dead by October. Because you know, Madam Whip-Ass ain't never wrong. And Madam Whip-Ass, that's crazy. That means something is wrong. Now, I could say, I could see somebody refers to themselves, and I have done it, but not consistently. Like if they say, Madam Whip-Ass took it. I'd be like, Madam Whip-Ass didn't take shit. Something like that. But to be online for hours and constantly refer to yourself in the third person, and you do this every week, frequently referring to yourself in the third person, something is wrong. But whatever, niggas, whatever. Anyway, I had a great day. I guess my birthday's over by now. I don't know what time it is. But it was great. My little niece got me the cutest little gift. It's a Halloween decoration of a black cat sitting on top of some books. A witch's book. What do you call a witch's book? Where they have their curses and spells. One of those books. A black cat is sitting on top of. It's cute. And you put a battery in it, and I think the eyes light up. Because I'm waiting for my Halloween train set. Actually, I got all the pieces except the locomotive. I've been waiting for a year, and I just got the pieces in the last 3 months, and the locomotive still has not come yet. Hopefully it'll get here before Halloween. I like to decorate. All right, I'm getting ready to start reading again. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for bearing with me. Ooh, this water's good. One more thing. Guess what happened to me 2 Saturdays ago. Y'all know I be doing my own lawn. I ain't mowing that bitch tomorrow. I'm paying somebody. But 2 weeks ago, I had hired a company, Turf Masters, to come and spray, just see how they gonna do for the year or whatever. So they came and sprayed the weeds, right? So I had a lot of weeds. So that meant that when I mowed, I'd have to bag the clippings. So when I bag the clippings, I take the clippings and dump the bag into a wheelbarrow, and I take it in the backyard, in the tree line right there, and I dump it into a pile. So I dumped the first bag, mowed some more, and the second bag went to the same spot. Now, I have some cargo pants that have a big holes in the thigh. That's why I wear them doing the lawn, So when I dumped the second batch, I felt something bite me on my thigh, on the inside of my thigh. I thought it was an ant. So, I, hit my thigh, whatever, and kept trying to dump the wheelbarrow. Next thing I know, I'm getting stung all in my legs, my arm, and I realized that I was standing, or I disturbed a yellow jack nest. And they nest in the ground. All these yellow jacks, I start running to get in the house. Now, coming from the yard, there's a walkway that's sort of an incline. Y'all, I ran so fast. When I got to the walkway, I tripped, and I don't even know what I tripped on. I don't even know how I felt like a white woman. I fell on the left side of my face, and I was on the ground before I knew I fell. But I popped right up and kept running. I ran in the house and shut the door, and I'm screaming, and I sit down on the step, and I'm still getting stung in my legs. So my sister and my cousin, they was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I couldn't even speak. And I started standing up and dancing because I was still getting stung. And they was like, strip, strip, strip. So I stripped in the kitchen, and when I took my pants off, all these bees flew out. Oh my God. It was traumatizing, y'all. It was traumatizing. When I was finally able, after they done got sprays and killed the bees and threw my clothes out on the deck, when I was able to sit down and collect myself, I counted 16 stings. I got stung 16 times. The left side of my face was swollen. From when I fell right on the left side of my face and had a big knot on my forehead on the left side. I have not been back out there to mow the lawn. And so I called somebody, and they're going to come and mow it tomorrow. And actually, I had the pest guy come, and they come every month. So they had already been here in the middle of July, but I had them come back Wednesday and spray in that area where those yellow jackets were. But yeah, that was not cute. And thank God I wasn't in any pain, especially from the fall. I didn't feel any pain about anything. I was just mad that I felt like a white woman. That's what pissed me off. Because I ain't supposed to fall. And it wasn't like I tripped on something. I don't even know what caused me to fall. Just fell out the blue for no fucking reason. If there was a reason, I tripped on something, then now I can understand. But there was nothing there for me to trip on. I don't know why I fell. And I was running so fast that when I fell, I propelled up. on the walkway because it was an incline right on the left side of my face. I was like, golly. Whew. All right, that's enough. I'm ready to get back to chapter 15. Let's go. Where you at, chapter 15? Oh, Lord, I'm going back. Where's 15? Where's 15? Okay, here we go. Chapter 15 is titled, Let's Tour, Finally. And it's a picture of the cover of the Switch album, which is titled, This Is My Dream. That's the title of the album. And it says, after years of being put on hold by the MOTOWN machine, we were finally going on tour with Switch, was to play in 30 cities, starting in Lake Charles, Louisiana. True to form and anticipated, Bobby, even during the planning stage, became the first problem out of the gate. Of all the things that could have been an issue, I was totally blindsided when he insisted we have to take his young boyfriend on the road with us. What are you saying? I asked Bobby in a surprised voice upon hearing his demand. Greg, we've got to take Clarence with us. And do what with him, Bobby? None of us are taking our girlfriends. Well, that's on y'all, but I really need him to be with me. Man, all the time I'm away from him, I'll be worried about how he's doing and what he's doing. He said, omitting the words, and with whom. Bobby, this is really going too far, man, I insisted. Man, you talking about us being all over the country for weeks at a time, and I can't just leave him at home, he pleaded. Bobby, the rest of the guys are leaving their women behind, and we won't be gone that long. I keep telling you, fuck them. What they do don't matter to me. I just know that if I'm going out on the road, I've got to have him with me. Man, if we can make this work, what is everyone else supposed to think or do? I don't know, and I don't care, Greg. But if he can't go, I'm not going. Do you hear yourself, nigga? I yelled. I shouldn't have been shocked at what this motherfucker just said, but I was. I struggled to find the words to say after that. I remember telling him that I'd see what could be done to make that happen, saying maybe we could give Tony a job doing something. Now, if I read that in a fragmented way, that's just the way it's written. I'll try and read it again. I shouldn't have been shocked at what this motherfucker just said, but I was. I struggled to find the words to say after that. I remember telling him that I'd see what could be done to make that happen, saying maybe we could give Tony a job doing something. Bobby excitedly input, he works hard and you can trust him, Greg. Let me take this to the band, Bobby. Yeah, you do that, but I'm serious. I knew Bobby had fallen in love and was insecure about Tony's fidelity. He had also become so codependent that he really could not leave him behind. Bobby and I talked a little longer and I revisited the logic, but he didn't budge. In my knowing that if I couldn't make this work out, all of my hard work would end up in vain, I had to take this ultimatum back to the others. With the exception of Tommy, like me, the others were shocked, pissed, and frustrated. After discussing it thoroughly and accepting the fact that this was the only way to finally get Switch on the road, everyone reluctantly decided that we'd hire Tony to be our valet. I say reluctantly because no one had a problem with Tony, but all of us had a problem with Bobby holding another gun to our heads. But to move things forward, we decided to put Tony in charge of having our stage costumes ready and waiting for us before each show, then cleaned, stored, and ready for our next use. He would handle our small personal instruments and be in charge of making sure security was protecting our dressing room while we were on stage. Once the decision was made and his role and responsibilities were defined, the whole group moved forward, planning other aspects of the upcoming tour, i.e., road manager, roadies, side musicians, and stage setup. We decided on our stage costumes, our set list or song lineup, which songs and who would play which instrument on what song, and even which songs would be choreographed. Putting our live performance together was really a major undertaking, but like most things we did together, we made it a fun process as we were just happy to finally get to take our show on the road. You're welcome, Sarah. While Switch had been busy working on a fourth album, This Is My Dream, unknown to me, Bobby had also picked up another drug of choice. For years, Bobby and Tommy frequented and bought their drugs on the corner of Crenshaw and Adams Boulevard, which was a well-known drug area of Los Angeles. This is where they could buy pills, freebase, and other common drugs. Once signed to MOTOWN, the other DeBarge siblings, with the exception of Elle, followed suit, where all of them also became well known in and around this area, and not just for the music they made. But now, Bobby had become strung out on cough syrup, and he used it to supplement his doors and fours and freebase addictions. Doors and fours? What the fuck is that? I'll read it again. But now Bobby had become strung out on cough syrup, and he used it to supplement his doors and fours and freebase addictions. I've never heard of doors and fours. He drank cough syrups named Citraforte and Tusionex combined with a barbiturate, doors and fours. For the cough syrup, Bobby found a doctor in LA who supplied him with the morphine-based syrup on a weekly basis. Wait a minute. Are they talking about what we knew in the early 2000s as lean? Is that the same shit? I think it is. This new addiction created additional problems for Switch when we began getting ready to go on tour, because by now he was seriously strung out and could not function without it. Although he was and had been on his full-blown diva trip for some time now, he did show up for most of our rehearsals. He was always intentionally late, but in my anticipation of that, I always told him rehearsal was to be an hour earlier than it actually was. And still, the rest of us had time to work incorporating steps, skits, and other antics into our show with the horn section before he arrived and disrupted our piece, until Jody and I skillfully brought him back into the fold. As I learned throughout my previous years in entertainment, if we were finally able to take Switch on the road, there was much work to be done. So, we did a lot of working, planning, and working some more until we had what we thought to be a tight stage show. And then we auditioned and hired side musicians to recreate our full sound, with the exception of string players. With 11 men on stage, our sound, look, and overall performance would be full and complete. With no help or interference from MOTOWN, we sought out and hired costume designers for our needed stage attire. And after hiring Bobby's lover, Tony, as our valet and personal assistant, we also hired barber Pat Edmondson, who, before moving to LA from Grand Rapids, used to do my hair from time to time when I would go home. Pat took care of all of Switch's hair on the road. Pat now lived here in LA and often hung out with all of us Grand Rapids folk, so I knew he would fit the needed bill. Sometime back, we had met and befriended Steve Altman, who had been a roadie for the Jackson 5. Since Switch had never gone on the road as a group, we considered having Steve go out with us. But at that time, he was owner and operator of a stage production company, working with big rock act, the Bay City Rollers. So his plate was too full, but he did advise and oversee the initial production. At his referral and recommendation, we hired Andy Truman as our road manager, which proved to be our first and biggest error in judgment. We did not know the disaster hiring Andy would bring. Although Andy wanted to hire his own people from the start, Bobby, Jody, and I were determined to remain loyal and keep our word to our guys from the white heat days. Sometime back, we promised we would hire them once Switch hit the road, so we contacted Tommy Upshaw as production assistant and David D. and Pye as our stage crew. The side musicians we hired were young, talented LA professionals consisting of Gerald Albright on tenor sax, Michael Patches Stewart on trumpet, Bernard Bateson on trombone, and Danny Cortez on trumpet. With Michael McGlory already on the road with Cheryl Lynn, Philip suggested and brought us his college friend, guitarist, Atala Zane Giles, to the table, and he was so good we looked no further. Zane was our man. And as we worked closer with him, his talents were so strong, we later made him a group member along with Terrence Gaines, as Bobby's exit was imminent. Switch, of course, covered the rhythm section and all vocals. With all plays in place now, we whipped our show into shape until the day came to take this on the road. And with this being Switch's first time on the road, and Bobby's, Jody's, and my first time out as stars, we were green and were destined to make many mistakes. From the onset, our biggest mistake was in hiring Andy to be our road manager, but that mistake took time to surface because we did not know the right, the wrong, or the indifferent about touring on this level. Bobby, Tommy, and I were busy getting high while the other Switch members were mostly having fun. It's a definite that one can't do what one doesn't know how to do, and in this particular case, we did not know how to cover our asses at all. So what could go wrong did go wrong. All the while, Andy was taking total advantage of our ignorance. Out of the gate, he had us traveling from city to city in Ford and Chevy rental cars instead of sleeper buses like most of the other bands. Then we switched to vans and later included private airplanes, none of which were feasible or practical. This guy would run up major bills for the cars, major hotels, and expensive restaurants, which began our problems. To add to the mayhem, for our first gig in Lake Charles, Louisiana, our equipment didn't arrive, and we had to use the Barcade stuff. We stayed on the stage beyond our scheduled 20-minute show, and the promo turned on the house lights and rushed us off the stage without letting us finish the song we were playing. The next gig in San Antonio, we played too long again, and they turned the lights on again. And although the Barcades were sympathetic to our rough start, Cameo's members had these smirks on their faces when they saw us at breakfast the next morning, and later one or two even burst out laughing as we headed for the stage later that night. Word up? Our next gig in Dallas, we had equipment problems again, and they turned the lights on us. And after 3 nights of mishaps, being unprepared and downright amateurish at road protocol, we had become the joke of the tour. We tried to get things tighter and make our next night work, but the loss of our equipment, even though we cut out a song, that's a damn shame. Our show was still too long, and it happened all over again in Houston, Texas. So I called a meeting of the band our sidemen, our road manager, and our roadies in my room after returning to the hotel that night to discuss what the hell had gone wrong each of the prior nights. We were all embarrassed and concerned by the outcome of each date, as we knew we were much better than we had come across to the fans, the other acts, and the promoters. We determined that we would have to revamp our show as well as our entire team's ways of doing things if we were going to show these folks what and who Switch really was. We all agreed that we would find a rehearsal studio somewhere between Houston and our next date in Charleston to revamp our entire production. With our first 3 days off coming up, we booked and went to Sir Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, where all of our collective stage experience and fresh bruises was pulled to help us get our on and off stage shit together. Once our collective years of live performance experience kicked in, we knew exactly what to do to get our show working. We had to make sure that our audience, other bands, the concert promoters, and all else would be fortunate to experience our live performance know that Switch was no joke. We came to play and we were here to stay. Over that 3-day period, we rehearsed, restructured, and slimmed down the show, limited the solos, and even added a few dance steps for the entire 11 men on stage to participate in. We put in 3 8 to 10-hour days of rehearsal and restructure time, and once we knew we were ready to do the damn thing, we headed for Charleston, West Virginia, for our next performance. This time we clearly had something to prove. We hit the stage with a vengeance, with our vocals and showmanship in high gear, and by the third song, the audience was ecstatic. Just as we began singing, "Girl, I'll Send You Flowers Every Day," the first row of girls broke through the barriers and trampled stage security to the floor. Once it was clear that there was no security in sight, the second and third row of girls came running. Just as this caught each of our eyes in shock, Philip yelled, "Run!" And every one of us fled the stage. Once safely back in our dressing room, we were all freaked out at what we had just witnessed. "Was that all about us?" Eddie asked. I heard someone yell, "Hell yeah, man." The whole room was filled with excitement, and everyone was speaking at the same time over each other about how awesome it was that they were having this level of effect on the audience. If I'm correct, it was Norman who yelled, "Hell yeah, man, Switch is here." From that point on, Switch was turning out every performance, and all promoters of all confirmed future dates were told they better triple their stage security if they wanted a building left. By now, we had also forged a bond with the entire Barcade's entourage. They became our brothers. They mentored our first outing as live performing stars and even invited us to come and hang with them in Memphis on our days off when the tour was near Tennessee, which we did a few times. I, as did most of my brothers, also appreciated the fan support. They clearly loved us and pretty much mobbed us at every opportunity. We were sought out and stalked at every possible opportunity. Even though that part was so overwhelming and we had to check into hotels using fictitious names, we still appreciated and had respect for our fans, who, by the way, were no less than 90% female. To divert the fans from finding, stalking, mobbing, and harassing us at hotels and outings, we had to create an alias for our entourage. Soon after we hit the road, we traveled and booked our hotels under the name the Steubenville Boys Gospel Choir. Individually, Jody was Sam Gucci, Bobby was Jack Daniels, Philip was D Pepsi, Eddie was and Tommy was Mr. D, and I was Colonel Plymmy Smith. I remember claiming the name Plymmy Smith because I played the organ but nowhere near the greatness of jazz organ legend Jimmy Smith. I explained to the fellas my playing to Jimmy's was like comparing pleather to leather, plus Pliny versus Jimmy. The Colonel part came later after Zane started calling me that. Colonel Pliny Smith. To me, there was no joy, excitement, or fulfillment that could exceed my feeling for this level of touring. Having been a performer since age 5, I was now taking stage after stage, night after night, as the leader of a famous recording act with well-known hit songs, performing in theaters, arenas, and concert halls, filled up with 24,000 excited fans yelling and screaming each band member's name. And despite my initial resistance to hiring Tony, the move quickly proved to work out because he proved to be responsible, reliable, more than efficient as Switch's valet roadie, and as my ally in keeping Bobby in line as much as humanly possible. Just before time for us to hit the stage one night within our first 2 weeks out, Bobby asked Jody and me if the three of us could have a meeting, as he had something important he needed to tell us. Having no idea what was on his mind, Jody and I agreed that the three of us should have breakfast the following morning before checkout time. After the show, I went through that night and ran into the next morning trying to anticipate what he might hit us with. I thought to myself, is he unhappy or sick? Does he think somebody should be fired? He's always cussing and complaining about something, I told myself. And then as I began to get worked up, I caught myself and realized, just wait and see what's next, Greg. The morning came quick enough, and the three of us met in the hotel lobby and headed into the restaurant to eat and talk. And once seated, we began to discuss how our show and the overall response of the other acts and the audience had improved by 100% as the waitress approached and took our orders. As she finished and stepped away, Bobby quickly began with, "Hey, you guys, I have to go back to LA. I'm running out of my medicine, and I have to go and see my doctor to get my prescription refilled." Prescription for what? Is it something we can get filled if we go through Memphis? Jody asked. No, Jody, it's for my cough syrup. My doctor makes it up specifically for me, and I can only get it when I go to see him. Is there no over-the-counter substitute? With the cost of a three-way flight on top of the syrup, have you considered how much this stuff will cost you? I asked. Yeah, I have, man, but I can't get the same stuff or anything close to it anywhere except from him, and I get sick without it. I've got the money. Damn, man. This doctor has got to know that you're hooked on this stuff, and he still makes it up and sells it to you. And he also makes money from your office visit? Huh? I asked. Man, I just have to fly in, see him, pick up enough for the week, and I fly right back. This time, I'll have to meet you all in Charleston. Meet us in Charleston? Bobby, I know, but I'm already getting sick, and what you have me do? Not be able to perform at all? Jody and I were both upset. But again, we had no choice. It was either let him go and get his drugs or have Switch leave the tour. Okay, Bobby, meet us in D.C., I said. But you have got to come right back, man, Jody added. Our food came, so we ended that topic and resumed talking about the show and how it was too clear that we had kicked the cami holes in the ass again and how jealous they were becoming. We laughed, and after breakfast, we checked out of the hotel, headed for the next city, the next show. And when we finished that show that night, Bobby left for Los Angeles. I became angry with myself for now making concessions to accommodate Bobby's addiction. They call cameo cameos. Making concessions had become a habit that was beginning to choke me more and more with each situation that arose through Bobby and or MOTOWN, which held me hostage to their demands of what had to take priority. I'd been conditioned most of my life to conform to situations when demanded of me, but my capacity to justify my acceptance without revolt had worn very thin by now, and I could feel that it wouldn't be long before I blew, and folks would finally see an ugly side of Greg. And to make matters worse, little did I know this was just the beginning of a pattern for Bobby that would last throughout the entire tour. Just need to take a break, drink some water. The kid is finally asleep. She is 3 going on 13, y'all. Y'all just don't know. All right, let's see. Oh, nobody new in chat? Come in the chat and say hello if you're listening. I just need to take a break for about 5 minutes if you don't mind. It's getting late and I'm getting a little tired and very thirsty. I just want to take a break, that's all. I don't think y'all mind too much because this is a very long chapter. I got a long way to go. And normally by now, I'd be playing some music. But again, I'm not on StreamYards because I know they made some changes. And I just didn't have time to learn something new and then try to read. And if I was on StreamYard, having to learn something new before I got on and went live, most likely I would have only read one chapter. So, sorry that there's no music. But it's all good. So please hit the like button and subscribe. Leave a comment. If you care to make a donation, a happy birthday donation or anything, is Madam with Bass on the $. $, Madam with Bass. Cash App. $, Madam with Bass. That's it. That's all. Thank you in advance. Whew. So what can I talk about other than this book in the next 4 minutes or so? What else has been going on? Well, in the true crime world, the Idaho 4, Brian Kohlberger, he pled guilty and he has received 4 life sentences plus some more time. He ain't never coming home, old weirdo freak. Then in Arkansas, at a park called the Devil's Run or something like that, some 28-year-old teacher stabbed a couple that was hiking with their two young little girls. I think the kids were like 7 and 9. They caught him quickly. I didn't have the patience to figure out if any one of you know and has been following the story. Did they divulge a motive? Why did this guy do this? I don't know. Weird shit, man. Weird shit. Now I'll just go through the headlines I've read, but not necessarily reading the body of the story. But Shannon Sharp got fired from ESPN. What took them so long? Number one. And number two, we got another woman suing him for $20 million. What is wrong with these black men? Smokey Robinson, he's being sued and accused of, assault. You do know Smokey Robinson is about 84, 85 years old, right? This is my thing. You can't run from that old ass man. I mean, really. Whatever. Diddy's still in jail. I've been reading headlines, and that's one headline I refuse to explore any further. That Trump is going to pardon him. Who knows? Who knows? Ooh, that would piss a lot of content creators off, won't it? If Trump pardons Diddy? And Cassie, she ain't gonna have much of her money left. It ain't gonna last too long. Although it's $30 million, she got her former employees, if you will. They suing her. Well, one of them so far. So she's gonna have to use. Man, please. Attorneys know how much millions she got. They're gonna sock it to her. And when that money get low, her husband gonna get low too and walk on out. Watch. Let's see what else is going on. What else? Let's not talk about inflation. Look, everything is getting smaller and more expensive. I ordered 2 boxes of kitty litter. These boxes are so small, it's not even funny. It's insulting. And it costs more. Who cares? Who cares about what, Tony? I'm not sure. Who cares about Trump pardoning Diddy? Who cares about content creators being pissed if Diddy is pardoned? Who cares about inflation? Who cares that I bought kitty litter 2 boxes and they're smaller and more expensive? Who cares about what? Let a sister know. Let a sister know. Who cares about what? I'm just trying to make small talk during my little break from reading. Because I'm really pushing it because I'm a little bit tired. Just a little bit. But I'm determined to finish this long-ass chapter. I'm determined. I really hate to start something and not finish it. Oh, yeah. If Diddy gets out, who cares? Yeah, really, who cares? But people gonna be pissed, and I'm here for it. I think there's one YouTuber Diddy gonna sue. He gonna sue the shit out of her, or send somebody to beat her ass. One or both. One or both. Because she has kind of been doing the most from time to time. Doing the most. All right. Either way, his reputation is destroyed. Probably. But I think he still has enough money to live a more than comfortable life. So it is what it is. All right, let's go. Although the limited few times when the six of us hung out together beyond rehearsal in the dressing room or we had fun, but by now, mostly gone were the days that all of us would laugh, talk, and just hang together. I read that sentence just how it was written. In the 4 years that had flown past, the closeness that we had shared from the Holiday Inn and Montague days had all but dissipated. And even though we were still a group at that time, it was more so in name only, as everyone had all but moved on into their own individual lives with their women and or children and or pets and or their mostly new friends. But right now, that show must go on, and so it did. And so did I, with the constant hope that one day my group would be solid as friends and family as it once was. After our second weekend out, our show had become tight, fresh, and exciting to all who witnessed, and the word was being heard throughout the entertainment industry, and even more loudly at the MOTOWN offices. Although Bob Jones would contact me and Andy to make arrangements for us to comp and or take interviews with a few press folks here and there, other than a random call from Shelley Berger to ask how things were going, we were on our own up to now. Mr. Gordy, being kept abreast of how and what we were doing out there, surprised me with a call one morning. I happened to be in my room packing and getting ready to head for our next city when the phone rang in my room. Hello? Hello, Greg, it's Berry. How are you? And how's it going out there? Somewhat shocked at his call, having not heard from him since earlier in the year, and only then, when I finally pestered him into releasing Switch from the no live performing hold, I managed to say, Mr. Gordy, I'm fine, and yourself? I'm well, Greg. I hear you tearing it up out there on the road. Yeah, we're trying, Mr. Gordy. How are the guys doing out there? Everyone is hanging in there, enjoying it for the most part, I finished. And Bobby? Well, Mr. Gordy, you know Bobby. Yeah, Greg, that's why I asked. I'm hearing that he's been seen here in L.A. more than he is on the road. He's not missing any dates, is he? None so far, thank God, I said, then holding my breath and hoping he doesn't miss any. Well, that's good to hear. Shelley tells me our promotion team will be working with you more in every city to make sure you get our support while you're out there. That's good to know. A few of them have definitely already met up with us and had us do a few radio stations in stores and clubs after the show. That's fine. We'll give my best to Philip and the guys and keep up the good work. I'll tell them all and we'll do our best. That was the extent of our conversation. I appreciate the fact that he even bothered to call. The excitement we were putting down on stage made Cashbox and Billboard magazine include our tour and box office receipts in their weekly concert report, saying Switch slash Barcades is the hottest R&B ticket out. The shows and the response to Switch got bigger and better as things moved along from city to city, state to state. Bobby was sometimes late and not at his best because of the travel and the drugs, but other than the Switch members who had heard him at his best, most folks thought he sounded great. I recall a few times when he'd arrived in a new city early for a gig after returning from yet another LA run. Bobby would be furious because he had left without or lost his travel itinerary, so he had no hotel info and couldn't find us. He'd have to go wait at the arena until sound check, which was always hours before the performance. The band gelled at that time, and even though Bobby's weekly absence left a hole in the camaraderie of the band, every show was so good. And after that first weekend out and the revamping of our show, the next 4 nights of Switch was the shit. We were tight, hot, and handsome, and we knew it. We literally transformed overnight to the hottest act on the ticket, so much so that the Cammy hoes had quit the tour after our second week on board because we'd become the attraction. I could see that. If you can picture the group Switch, if you could picture them on an album cover, and then picture Cameo with the dude with the flat top, wearing all black, and with the red thing in his groin area like it was a jock strap on the outside of his clothes. Yeah, I can see that. But this is back in 1980, so I'm talking about Cameo that we seen in 1986 with the Word Up video. But still, I could see Switch becoming, the apple of the eye in terms of fans. Throughout much of this tour, with the exception of my random moments with him and performance days on the bus, Switch did not see or come in contact with Bobby other than in the dressing room before or while being on stage. Other than that, he, his drug habit, and his ego stayed clear of us. No more meals, outings, or even grouping in the hotel lobby to go to the venue. Those days had come and gone as well as the Switch of my dreams. As a whole, the group did a few radio stations, in stores, and meet and greets while we toured, but mostly just a live performance. Although I could function, do my job, even keep up appearances during this short tour, drugs had also cluttered my existence. And many nights after the show, I would end up in my room with Miss Freebase as my date for the evening, which after I ran out, I would feel guilty about my addiction. In fleeting moments of clarity, I repeatedly told myself, I'm going to stop this shit now and never do this again. I won't go out like this. I would then proceed to break my pipe and throw it and all other paraphernalia away, only to go out and buy all new stuff again and again when the urge became too strong to resist. I remember deceiving myself into thinking, this one time won't hurt. But this one time came over and over and over. Yes, that freebase, that pipe was calling me, and I'd come running. Throughout this time, I somehow managed to not cross certain lines. When it came to my personal upkeep and Switch business, I was able to maintain and hold up the facade that all was okay. As it happened, by now, Switch's value to Motown had become all but non-existent, and our business as Motown artists was all but through. Without a word, Hazel and Jermaine had completely exited the picture, and Shelley Berger was elected to be our so-called interim manager in name only. On the other hand, I was alone in dealing with negative road issues, which mostly stemmed from Andy's mishandling of our business and stealing the majority of our money. And when I got tired of not seeing any money, I asked to see the expense reports, but I was never shown one. Yet I was consistently given excuses why the reports weren't available for me to see. I found out he had been stealing money from us and running up tremendous bills, which Switch would then have to pay. Jody and I had many discussions, which we later took to the other Switch members before deciding that Andy was stealing and had to be fired. We kept that in the planning stage until the right time to make that move would come. As our tour and life itself rolled on, good and bad, Switch 2 continued to evolve. Philip, Eddie, and Zane, who'd begun studying the Jehovah's Witness doctrines, one after the other shortly before the tour, became witnesses. And Jody, after marrying Maureen, also became a witness. Bobby and Tommy continued doing their thing, which the others of us were not interested in taking part. My drug use increased, and so did my personal struggles and subsequent embarrassment because of it. But I had to keep moving for now and make plans to deal with my personal issues after this tour was over. And after a short holiday break, it was back to work for Switch and everyone on the tour. And on this particular leg of the tour, much had changed, and Switch's first order of business was to get rid of Andy. And at the suggestion of tour promoters Darrell Brooks and Carol Kirkendall, I then contacted Norman Smith, the concert promoter out of Atlanta, who Switch had met and befriended during the first leg of the tour. We offered him the job as our road manager for the balance of the tour, and he accepted. After a big, dramatic blow-up confrontation about the constant theft and mishandling of Switch's business, Andy was fired and damn near thrown out of the home that Eddie and I shared. With that out of the way, Norman flew to LA. Together we formulated our game plan, i.e. our production and stage employees, mode of transportation, level and frequency of hotels, and other details which would make this time on the road run smoother than our last outing. This leg of the tour began on the west coast of California, playing San Diego, Oakland, Sacramento, Phoenix, and even in LA when we moved southeastwardly across the U.S. Yes, it's the second leg of this tour, and Switch was now seasoned pros at performing live, at knowing better what to do with our money and our time. Sadly, we also got better at knowing what to expect from and how to cover for Bobby. From city to city, the performance lineup would change except the Barcades headlined. Switch held down second billing as special guests. So there's some pictures on this next page, pictures of them live. So it looks like there's Bobby and Philip. They singing something. And then the next picture is Philip and Greg. This is all them live on stage. And then there's Eddie and Tommy. Eddie just passed away like 2 months ago or so. Rest in peace, Eddie. Then the next page is a picture of Greg and a picture of Jody. And then there's a picture of Philip and Bobby. And this is all in 1981. From the start of this tour, most of the audience belonged to Switch and supporting acts, i.e. Roger and Zap, Kool and the Gang, the Pointer Sisters, Michael Henderson, Stacy Lattisaw. I found love on a two-way street and lost it on a lonely highway. True love. All right. The Gap Band, Confunction, Slave, walking down the street, watching ladies go by watching you. And various other acts filled the performance roster as we moved from city to city. Unlike the first half of the tour, we traveled in a tour bus, which was equipped with a folding dinner table in the game area at the front entrance, a sleeping area in the middle with 6 twin-sized bunks on each side of the bus, and a lounge area and bathroom in the back with a couch, which opened into a queen-size hide-a-bed. All right, y'all moving up in the world. One bus rule was to never have any women on the bus, and it was enforced by our bus driver, Big Mac, who maintained strict discipline, except for a couple of times when the guy slipped women on and would be partying. Why didn't you want women on the bus? When the tour initially started, Cameo had second billing to the Barcades, but after Switch tightened up and stole the show a few times, Cameo left. Switch moved up, and Roger and Zap opened right before Switch on most of the remaining dates, and all of us became good friends. Roger and I had this running joke where nearly every night on his way to the stage, he would stop in our dressing room and accuse me, "Man, you stole my piece of chicken." Of course, the room would bust into laughter. I would pretend to defend myself from his accusations while he and I exchanged jokes for the next few minutes. Then he'd leave, join the others on stage, and they'd kick ass with their performance, after which we do the same when it was our turn. That was the kind of camaraderie and friendship that most of Switch had with almost everyone on the tour, as egos and attitude were never a part of our makeup as a group. I recall the night we played San Diego. Many of our friends and family, including the DeBarge brothers, who were unknown at the time, came to the concert. While one of the other acts was on stage performing, Switch was in the dressing room sharing a private moment before getting dressed to go on. So we had our staff clear the room of a guest till after the show. While waiting with the other guests backstage, L came upon a piano which was not being used and started to play. The volume was turned off, so L playing did not disrupt anything that was happening on stage in any way, but an overjealous security guard asked him to stop playing. L, knowing he wasn't disturbing anyone, continued to play as he stood up to stop. Because L didn't stop playing quick enough for the promoter, he told the security guards to physically remove L, so they picked him up and forcefully removed him, roughing him up a little in the effort. Norman happened to catch the end of the altercation. He immediately stood up for L and made the promoter and security folk apologize for their poor handling of this minor problem. Norman then brought L into our dressing room to collect himself. Once in the room, L, crying and upset, told Bobby his version of what had happened. Without letting Norman share his handling of the problem, Bobby immediately threw a fit, yelling and cursing erratically at the top of his lungs. "Don't no motherfucker put their hands on a DEBARGE, Greg. I'm not standing for that. I'm a man." "Bobby, what's the matter, man?" Norman's trying to say. They already... Wait. "Bobby, what's the matter, man?" Norman's trying to say they already apologized to L and us and said it was a misunderstanding. They didn't know L was with us. He wasn't wearing his backstage pass, and they had asked him to stop 3 times. Bobby looked at L, noticing he wasn't wearing his pass. Okay, but this shit ain't over. They don't fuck with no DeBarge like that, man. I ain't going on. Come on, man, Jody interjected as the look on Phillips, Eddie, and Tommy's face turned from happy to, oh shit, here we go again. Bobby, it's almost time to hit. We can't just back out now. Shit, if we can, and that's just what I'm doing. But shit, if we can't, and that's just what I'm doing, Bobby threw in. I had to walk to the other side of the room to keep from losing it. First of all, before the shit burst into our dressing room, the 6 of us were in there talking, laughing, having fun while getting dressed to go on. I too didn't like the fact that Elle was treated poorly by these idiots, but he was doing something he really shouldn't have been doing. Without visual credentials to even be back there, he got caught and paid a price after repeated requests for him to stop. So this treatment was not altogether unprovoked. Then the folks apologized to Elle and all of us, so this shit should have been done and over with, but not for Bobby. Tell them motherfuckers I'm not going on. Come on, man, that's taking this shit a little too far, I said from across the room. Bobby looked me in the eye and started towards me saying, I mean it, man. If they don't straighten this out, I'm not going on. How do you want them to straighten this out, man? Norman asked. They've already apologized. Tell the promoters that we want more money or we aren't going on. Don't you dare do that shit, I angrily said to Norman. Just as I began to raise my voice to tell Bobby where he could get off, Norman was there to jump in front of me and cut me off, saying, okay, Colonel, if that's what it's going to take to get this show done, that's what I'll do. He turned towards me with his back to Bobby and winked his eye, which quickly diffused my anger, so I bit my tongue to hold back what I had to say next. Then he turned back around. Bobby, how much am I supposed to ask for? Norman asked seriously. I don't know, man. Just tell them what we want and see what they have to say, Bobby said without looking back at me. I'll handle this and come back here. Now, will y'all all at least get dressed while I do my thing? Norman asked as he exited the room. It took a minute or so, but as our roadies again cleared the room, each of us began to get dressed. Taking Norman's lead, I started a conversation about how we were going to hurt that audience tonight while Jody began to talk Bobby down from his stance. Everyone, including Bobby, resumed getting dressed while we waited for Norman to return. And after about 10 minutes more, Tony knocked on the dressing room door and yelled, "They're calling for you guys." Tommy suggested we have prayer as we usually did before going on stage, just as Norman walked back into the room. All of us jumped to attention as he gestured that we continue forming our circle. He then said, I spoke to Daryl and Carol is gone. But he and I will get with her and work something out as soon as she gets back here. But in the meantime, we should get to work. The lights are off, the audience is getting impatient, and the production folk are calling for you. So let's have prayer, go and do our show. He then signaled to Bobby that they would talk after the prayer was done, and then he unexpectedly opted to lead the Switch entourage in prayer for the first time. Father God, bless us. Tommy, being happy that Bobby's tantrum was over for now, could no longer contain himself or his too silly sense of humor. So before Norman could continue or get another word out, Tommy burst out laughing, causing the entire room to just fall out with laughter. Even Norman and Bobby had to break all seriousness and join in with the rest of us. This, of course, broke the tension for everyone. Won't he do it? Won't the Lord do it? All he said was, Lord, bless us. Everybody started laughing, tension gone. Praise sweet baby Jesus. As we were leaving the room to hit the stage, Norman pulled Bobby to the side and whispered something which made Bobby smile as we all stopped at the side of the stage as the night's MC introduced us. Norman later informed me that he told Bobby to let it go and he'd make sure things were made right. From that point, nothing more ever came out of that incident. The MC's introduction was met with thunderous screams and applause, and we hit the stage. And again, kicked some serious ass. Most Switch members and our side men were humble, solid, considerate guys who got along with and were courteous to the other acts, their entourages, the promoters, the fans, hotel and restaurant employees, and pretty much everyone we encountered. We used to have big fun as a group on and off stage, after the gig and especially on our off days, with the exception of Bobby, who quickly separated himself. Even Tony wanted to and tried to hang with us, but was usually summoned away by Bobby. In most cases, a band becomes a tighter unit and closer friends while touring due to the large amount of time spent together on the road. But the love and closeness that I was accustomed to sharing and being a member of more than 5 professional bands in my years prior to Switch did not exist here. It could not exist here because we would never again be whole due to one person's mental and emotional fragmentation. Although I had hoped in Switch's beginning, Bobby DeBarge no longer knew trust. He no longer knew loyalty. He no longer cared what others thought, as his ego, his drug dependency, and his determination to self-destruct ruled all logic, no matter how or from whom it was presented. The years of physical, psychological, emotional, sexual abuse which Bobby had endured at the hands of his deranged father, and which he subsequently forced on some of his own brothers, had gradually culminated into a vicious, unrelenting cycle of self-destruction. But the rest of our band, including our sidemen and our road personnel, partied hard on the road. And while Bobby had a menage a trois with his drugs and Tony, Jody, Tommy, our side musicians, and I took advantage of the many women at our disposal, except for Philip and Eddie, who had serious relationships waiting at home. Although one could and often did question Philip's motives, as he always had a room full of women. Why are you snitching? Didn't nobody need to know that. But what most folk didn't know was Philip was always honorable in his commitments and intentions. He always made sure that of the girls he allowed to hang around, the only physical contact they might share was as if she was the one he chose to do his hair that night. For real. I too was always straight with the groupies and party girls, never promising, lying about sharing tomorrow, even the next time Switch would come through their town. So as long as she and I could have a decent conversation, I had no problems with them because we both knew what the night was about. From time to time, depending on what city we were in, I would take advantage of the limousines at our 24-hour access and would be driven on sightseeing tours, while the others were partying or sleeping. Traveling through the South was sometimes taxing, as many nights we'd have to leave the comfort of hotel rooms behind, climb into our bunks to sleep in an effort to make it to the next city and next performance on time. I recall being in disbelief that the Troutman brothers would travel in a couple of large vans, which they owned, and travel to the next city after almost every show. When we heard this from Darren Carroll, most of Switch talked about how we couldn't or wouldn't travel like that because it was too hard on you. I too was in total agreement till one day I learned that with the majority of the money the Troutman brothers saved on airplane and bus costs, they bought and owned apartment complexes and ran a big construction company in their hometown of Dayton. From what I've come to know, they were a serious, respected business and talented music family. Wow. With all the members of the group, they could have been doing the same thing. Buying a van, owning their own vans, and they could have just, one dude drive for an hour, the next dude drive for an hour. They shouldn't be too tired after that if they share in the drive. Yes, road life was big fun, but it also got scary late one night. After the shows were over, per usual, female fans would somehow find us and converge on our hotel. Despite our using aliases, there were a few nights without a knock at the door or a group of girls hanging out in the hotel hallways until they found us. One night, a man showed up at our hotel in Jackson, Mississippi, screaming for his wife, who was in the room with Philip. "Come on out. I know you in there. I love you, girl. Come on out." Eddie had come to my room and told me this fool was outside. I went to the hotel entrance. He was crying and holding his shotgun. "Excuse me, sir? There's no Betty here. Is one of you them switch guys?" "Yes, I am. I'm Greg, and I'm the leader. I swear there's no Betty Ann in any of our rooms. She might be using another name, but I know she's in there because a girlfriend told me, and I'm going to kill somebody if she don't get her ass out here." "You sure she ain't with the Barkays or Kool in the gang?" "Nah, man, she's in love with y'all switches, and if she don't come out, I'm coming in." "Okay, man, I'll go look in all the rooms and see if anyone knows Betty, and if they do, I'll have her come out. But you have to put that gun down and stop hollering before the police come, and we all get in trouble." He put down the shotgun and sat on the grass crying. I went inside the hotel, and Eddie met me in the lobby. "She's in Philip's room." By this time, Norman had showed up, so we hurried to Philip's room, and I knocked on his door. "Philip, man, we've got trouble. That lady in your room's husband is outside with a shotgun." Philip finally came to the door. "You're kidding." "I'm not kidding, man. You've got to get her out of here. She was in here doing my hair, but when she finished, I told her I had to go and get some sleep. So she left with her girlfriend." "Okay, but if she comes back, don't let her in. Tell her that her man is outside with a shotgun looking for her." As Norman and I headed back towards my room, a female voice came from somewhere behind me. "I told Roosevelt I don't want him, and it's over there, and now he done made a fuss. Let me go talk to him." She was a fine little red bone who switched past me. I stopped her. I suggest you go out the back door so he won't know where you came from. She jumped up and quickly made it down the hall and out of the side exit. Wait a minute, I'm confused. Didn't Philip say it like you? I'm going back. Philip finally came to the door. You're kidding. I'm not kidding, man. You've got to get her out of here. She was in here doing my hair, but when she finished, I told her I had to get some sleep, so she left with her girlfriend. Okay, but if she comes back, don't let her in. Tell her that a man is outside with a shotgun looking for her. As Norman and I headed back towards my room, a female voice came from somewhere behind me. I told Roosevelt I don't want him and it's over. Damn. And now he done made a fuss. Let me go talk to him. She was a fine little redbone who switched past me. I stopped her. I suggest you go out the back door so he won't know where you came from. She jumped up and quickly made it down the hall and out of the side exit. As she appeared outside and headed into the parking lot, Norman and I watched from the windows of my room. Roosevelt, what you doing here? I told you it's over. Now leave me alone. Roosevelt fell on his knees and grabbed Betty around her legs. Betty Ann, you my wife and I want you to come home. Now don't make me have to use my gun. Crying, he let go of her and standing picked up his shotgun. All of us who had just witnessed the situation took cover in the safety of our rooms. When I thought it was safe, I peered out of the window again and they were gone. A few hours later, as we were boarding the bus to leave, she appeared again and approached Philip. All of us, close enough to see her, noticed with the right side of her face swollen and blue. Philip backed away from her. Hi, Philip. I'm back. Philip, always the gentleman, moved her face to see the bruises better. I see you're back, but yeah, we're leaving and you can't come with us. I don't get involved with married women. I told y'all it was over between me and Roosevelt. Hell, I told him too. It might be over for you, but not for him. And that shotgun and I don't want any trouble. I have to go now. Bye. Philip walked onto the bus, leaving the girl standing there, waving as our bus drove off. This was just one of the many road situations many women brought and or imposed on us. And the band played on. Leaving the South, we headed to Memphis to rehearse, to get off the bus for a while, and to spend our 3-day break with the Barkays, as we often did through this tour. Bobby, Tommy, and I got really excited when Norman told us that Grand Rapids had recently added to the performance itinerary, and I quickly made sure that at least 20 tickets each were made available for us to give some to let me read the sentence again. Long ass sentence. Bobby, Tommy, and I got really excited when Norman told us that Grand Rapids had recently added to the performance itinerary, and I quickly made sure that at least 20 tickets each were made available for us to give some of our 2 family members and friends. First of all, he used T-O-O when it should just be T-O. Our date there was a couple of weeks away, but the thought of finally performing at home held all of us in anticipation until that day finally came. In Grand Rapids, Switch was given a hero's welcome which began at the airport. My mom, my stepfather Frazier, and my dad were a part of the big reception we received upon landing in Grand Rapids. I remember embracing my stepfather, but being a little less enthusiastic when approached by my dad, feeling that he was more so there to be seen than in support of the son he wasn't there for. And when I thought about my actions, I was saddened by the thought that I was made to feel that way by his absence from my life while I was becoming this star he now respected. In conversations with him much after that day, without knowing how I felt, he repeatedly assured me that he came because he was proud of me, and yet the fact that he was sad that he was not part of my life from the beginning showed on his face. There was also a press and public reception at my old alma mater, the new Ottawa Hills High School, where Orla Switch was given keys to the city, and Bobby and Tommy were given honorary high school diplomas. Really. I'm sorry, I'm just pausing and taking that in for a moment. As hard as I worked throughout high school, academically speaking, studying, taking those tests, writing papers and stuff like that, earning the right to walk across that stage. Here you got two high school dropouts that were getting high. Now they're grown men, successful recording and touring artists, and still junkies. They get honorary high school diplomas just because they're famous. Ain't that a kick in the fucking head? You know what? With that, I'm just going to take a little break, if you don't mind. I got about 7 more pages. 8, no, wait. Got about 10 more pages. Well, 20 if you want to include front and back to read. So just let me take another little break. Yo, hell, at least he got his diploma one way or the other, right? Better late than never. You get your high school diploma by dropping out, not doing shit during your high school years. They didn't even have to take a fucking GED test. How fair is that? Really? Come on, y'all. By the way, while I'm taking this little break, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And also, I had a birthday yesterday. If you care to donate, you're more than welcome. $ Madam Whip Ass. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Why should you donate for my birthday? Would you like to buy me a birthday present? I'll tell you what I want for my birthday. What do I want for my birthday? What do I want? Oh, give me a nice little Halloween decoration from that home decor store called At Home. I would like a bunch of black roses or black peonies, the long stem. They're fake, but they're just black. And I need a bunch of them. It'll cost about uh, $40. If you want to send a donation and chip in for that, I'd greatly appreciate it. That'd make a wonderful birthday present for my subscribers. That's if the Lord puts it on your heart. Ah, man, oh man. This 3-year-old has been with me from the beginning of July. She has been a handful, and I can't explain it. What I can explain is that when she's up, she has so much energy and she just gives me a run for my money. Then when she goes to bed at night and I'm still up, I want her to be up because I miss her being up. She's so much fun though. She really is. And so smart and bright. She's going to be leaving in the next couple of days and I'm going to miss her. I really am. She definitely keeps you going. For real, for real. Mm-hmm. We left off with them getting keys to the damn city, which is fine. They got their high school diplomas. All right, here we go. Thank you for being patient for my little break. Being back in Grand Rapids felt good. It was even better getting to perform as stars at home for family, friends, and fans for the first time. Although in town for less than 48 hours, my family and I got together for dinner the evening before the show. Greg, we are really proud of you. You really represent us as a family, were just a few of the things being said by various family members throughout my brief visit. I, of course, had heard this many times before now, but after all the doubts, fears, and questions of others throughout the years of my ups, downs, and struggles, this was finally a well-deserved pat on the back. I would respond in return, "You all don't realize what you've given me. I carry all of you everywhere I go. I'm proud to be a Williams." I ate, drank, hung with my family, and passed out tickets for the concert. New cousins I'd never seen before and a few musicians I had jammed with just showed up at my mom's house after hearing I was in town. Among other things, one of my old musician acquaintances began to tell me, "Greg, I knew I should have gone to California with you when you asked me. I'd be on stage with Switch now, just like you." Kinda laughed with him and never called him out, but I just wondered what the hell he was talking about. All the while I'm knowing that he was straight up lying, and if he could look me in the eyes and tell that lie, I know he must have told it to anyone and everyone who would listen since Switch's music first hit the airwaves. And when I thought about how he was as a musician, hell, I would have never asked him to join me in anything. I did everything I could to keep from busting up laughing in his face. But I'd never step on his illusion like that anyway, especially since it cost me nothing to let him keep that thought and possibly hope alive. I knew before that returning to Grand Rapids as a star would be this way. I knew that many of the folks that I knew and or knew me who dared not to chase dreams, those who may have been afraid or unable to leave home in pursuit of a better life, would claim a greater relationship with me than what actually existed, and live vicariously through my now well-documented accomplishments. But this was still and would always be home, and the folks, be it family, friends, and even acquaintances, would always be my folks. That's interesting. People be delusional. One thing I can't stand is people who tell lies and seriously believe their own lies. Believe it. Although my moment there was just a quick pass through, I was happy to be there, to perform there, and was equally happy to again leave Grand Rapids behind and continue the tour dates. After Grand Rapids, we played in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where this seriously old theater, which I believe Abraham Lincoln first saw John Wilkes Booth perform, was freezing because their heating was busted and the radiators throughout were frozen solid. Minneapolis is cold as hell. I don't know how people live there. The show's opening act was a then unknown act named Flight Time, whose lead singer was a young Alexander O'Neal. This tour, although fun, was also hard work, and Switch's performance appeared to get stronger as the days went on, but certain band members were beginning to show signs of wear. As we played our way across the country, I noticed Bobby's voice getting weaker. He was more agitated and becoming more irritating. I soon discovered Philip again had told both Bobby and Tommy he wouldn't be lending them any more money. Well, Bobby probably didn't have any money for drugs, and when he didn't have money for at least his cough syrup, his body suffered. His throat and singing suffered. He suffered. And then Switch suffered on and off stage. On a date in Colorado, Bobby could only make it through 4 songs because he was so sick and hoarse. And at another concert, he couldn't sing at all, so he pretty much sat there on stage while Philip carried most of the lead vocals as the rest of us filled in as best we could. Because Bobby's problems were now all of ours, I was almost happy this tour was coming to a close. One day, we were preparing to leave town and get back on the road headed for the next city. While most of the guys were checking out, Norman called me outside where the bus was being packed. "Colonel, we got a serious problem." "What's that?" "Actually, we have 2 problems." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of hotel receipts and bills and started handing specific ones to me. "These are the bills which MOTOWN sent this morning. They're from the last few hotels we stayed at, and they're for things Bobby either broke, but mostly stole from different rooms." Damn. He was stealing shit from hotel rooms while on tour to get drugs? I looked at the bills. There were these charges for lamps, towels, tables, sheets, and pillowcases, pictures among other items which Bobby had stolen from his and Tommy's rooms. There were also charges for broken items, including wall fixtures, beds, a television, and even a toilet stool. How the hell you break a toilet? Upon discovering these broken and missing items, the hotels had done additional billing and faxed them to MOTOWN, who had them forwarded to me, care of Norman, at our current hotel. Looking over the list of items, I immediately thought back to something Bobby had repeatedly told me. When they were kids, one of the DeBarge family's favorite pastimes was to go alley hunting. What this entailed was they would go through the alleys and scrounge around in people's trash and collect and keep anything salvageable. The DeBarge children would then take these things home and use them. As that memory and vision began to dissipate, I was snapped back into the reality of the moment I asked Norman, "What's the other problem?" He pointed to the storage space on the bus. "We almost can't close the storage space's doors because all of this stuff Bobby has stored under the bus. We don't have room for one thing more." Looking in the storage space, I could see where Bobby had hastily thrown various stolen hotel room items about with the intent of taking them home to furnish his apartment. Really? He's a dopehead. He wouldn't furnish his apartment with that shit. "How much of this shit can be taken back, Norman?" I asked. "How we gonna get it back, Colonel?" he asked in all seriousness. "We can't have Big Mac turn this bus around and go back to every city Bobby's done stole shit from, now can we?" With my quick wit for humor, I wanted to burst out laughing at Norman's response, but the moment was too serious and the problem at hand needed real resolution. "Have the roadies take whatever from this hotel back inside. They can take the rest of the small stuff and put it on Bobby's and Tony's bunks," I said. "Switch ain't gonna pay for this shit either, so I suggest that we subtract the cost of what we can't take back from Bobby's pay." When most of the members had checked out and put their bags next to the bus where Big Mac and the roadies could pack them, Norman began to pass out pay receipts and cash to our sidemen and roadies, then each switch member. With my guys, I knew the ritual. Whenever we got paid, Eddie and Jody would send money home to their families. Tommy and Bobby would buy drugs and alcohol. I'd buy clothes, sometimes a little cocaine, and put the rest in the bank, and Philip would put all of his in the bank. Due to this day starting out with the discovery of Bobby's new hobby, I knew this particular payday was definitely going to be different than most others. I also knew all hell would break loose when he was informed how his pay would be minus the cost of the items he had so recklessly stolen and or broken. As our entourage filled the bus and received their pay, I believe Bobby was among the last of us to get with Norman. As soon as he reached Norman and saw his pay receipt, like I said, all hell broke loose. Bobby began to yell at the top of his lungs. Everyone on the bus, and I believe within 2-block radius, could hear him screaming, "Where the fuck is my money? This ain't what I'm supposed to get." Bobby began to speak as calmly as he could, trying to explain to Bobby, "Man, this is all you've got coming. You didn't think taking all of that stuff you had been hiding under the bus was going to catch up with you? Bobby, I didn't know you were doing this, or I would have stopped you from the beginning. These hotels aren't going to just let this slide here." "Here," Norman said while pulling the billing invoices from his briefcase. "Look at these bills we got from the last few hotels we stayed at. They sent this stuff to MOTOWN, and MOTOWN sent it to us." While snatching and glancing at one of the receipts, Bobby said, "But Norman, that shit ain't worth all of this, and I ain't paying for it." "But man, you already paid for it," Norman said. "Somebody had to pay for it immediately, and MOTOWN wasn't going to pay for your stuff. Besides not having the money, Switch wasn't going to pay for your stuff either. So just what does that leave, man?" "They can't charge all of that for that raggedy shit, man." Bobby turned and came after me as I was standing just outside of the bus. "Greg, what the fuck is this?" I called Norman over and he said, Colonel, he knows that he got to pay for the stuff under the bus. Bobby, it belongs to you and you have to pay for it. Bobby glared at me, then at his pay receipt, and he fell to the ground, crying, sobbing uncontrollably. His eyes, his cries echoed off the bus and off the buildings near where we parked. Tony, who was working with Big Mac, putting our wardrobe case to the bus, came over and tried to pick him up, saying, Come on, Bobby, we got to get on the bus. But Bobby balled up into fetal position and pushed him away. After trying again to get Bobby to his feet, Tony turned and walked away to finish loading things on the bus. After another moment, Norman managed to get Bobby off the ground, onto the bus, and into a bunk. Once the last few members piled onto the bus, we drove off, headed for the next city and the next hotel. It was midday when we arrived and checked into our hotel. Everyone exited the bus without a word, waited to get their room keys from Norman, and immediately went to their rooms. I, too, went straight to my room and waited till I thought everyone would be situated. Then I called Norman and the other 4 switch members and asked them to come to my room, which they did. Guys, I think this is the end of the road. I think Bobby's having a nervous breakdown and he's not going to make it. Looking around, Philip leaned up against the wall and looked out the window. Eddie and Jody looked worried, and Tommy, who had taken a seat, shook his head in agreement. I actually felt relieved. You don't think he can make it through this last week or so, Greg? Jody asked. There's nothing else we can do? Between the drugs, the losing his voice, and his attitude with all of us, I don't know if any of us can keep going, I replied. Norman chimed in. If things don't get better with him after our next 3 days off, I don't think we're going to have much of a choice. With nothing else to be said, everyone left my room to eat and get some rest before duty called that evening. After traveling to perform one-nighters for more than 3 months without returning through America's South, Midwest, and East Coast by car, van, airplane, and bus, this tour was about to end. We had one more gig before heading home, and by now the band was tired physically, mentally, and emotionally. On the day of our last performance for this tour, came, I read it just how it was written. A few of us had picked up colds due to the constantly changing weather, and our entire entourage was exhausted. We played the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia. To the audience, our performance didn't suffer at all, but we knew that the concert sucked that night because the band had lost its energy, and once again, Bobby had killed everyone else's joy. Due to the cold and fatigue, during that performance, Ellie fell off the side of the stage, which was 6 feet off the ground, and he was taken to the hospital by ambulance. While playing the last song of our set, Jody, who had earlier that day had complained of flu-like symptoms, fainted, and he too was taken to the hospital by ambulance. The signs were too obvious that for Switch, the tour was over. My intuition was confirmed when Bobby told me after we finished our last gig that he was through with Switch. I assumed that to mean that he was finally going solo. This time, all I could feel was relief. No sadness, no anger, no concern about my group. While talking with Shelley and other Motown execs from the road, both Bobby and I had finally convinced them that after this tour we would no longer work together. By now, I was really glad to see him go because, among the obvious reasons, I could no longer watch him suffer, and he saw no way out, causing others to suffer, especially me. The writing was on the wall as his and my friendship had seen its last day for now. I still love him, but now I had to even put that love on hold. Enough already. Uno mas. Upon our return to Los Angeles, each member of our entourage retreated back into our personal lives. As more than a month had passed, I had been in contact with one form or another with each member of Switch, with the obvious exception of Bobby. In speaking with Tommy, I was told that Bobby was outraged and constantly making aggrieved accusations against Motown and me. His drug-ridden state of mind had escalated to the point where his psychosis had everyone he knew doing things to hurt him. His complaint about Motown was the typical: I'm a superstar and them motherfuckers are ripping me off, while his main complaint about me was mean and totally unfounded. In his mind, I had become an enemy who supposedly had gone back behind his back and got money from promoters and didn't share with him, as he had accused me of doing the same with Motown a year or so back, when nothing could have been farther from the truth then and at any time. Bobby also felt that he should be in control of Switch and all aspects of the group's business since he was the group's lead singer. In fact, according to him, Greg, people know my voice and your hat. The other motherfuckers don't matter. But besides the fact that he in no way, shape, or form was ever responsible enough to even sober enough to handle his own business, and with the exception of Tommy, no member of Switch had enough respect for him, other than musically, to follow him in anywhere. I read it just how it's written. After he realized his thoughts and actions were getting him nowhere, he simply stopped taking my calls and showing up for meetings and rehearsals. By now, he was living in a completely distorted reality. Ultimately and sadly, his arrogance, accompanied by his out-of-control drug use, destroyed all hopes he had in becoming a solo artist. Motown had no choice but drop him soon after Switch left the label. Once dropped from Motown, I came to know that through relationships he had with James Mason of the Bar-Kays, Larry Blackman, founder leader of Cameo, signed Bobby to a short-lived production deal, which also yielded no fruit due to Bobby's life of drugs and overt sexual proclivities. Not long after the Switch tour was over, I did, however, have to reach out to Bobby with the intent to get our stage costumes so I could have them cleaned and stored. Bobby was nowhere to be found, which led me to accept the fact that he really didn't want to see me and was in hiding out from me. This was truly fine by me, but only if I got me hands. That's right, it says, if only I got me hands on switches and my property, which Bobby was holding somewhere. In my quest to get our stage costumes back, I did find out that he and Clarence were now living as a couple. Clarence? Who the hell where's Clarence? What the hell happened to Tommy? I did find out that he and Clarence were now living as a couple and had been evicted from their apartment due to non-payment of rent and destruction of property. I didn't know till later that he had moved back into Howard Weekly Hotel in Hollywood, which was the first place Bobby and I ever stayed in California as members of White Heat. Bobby was a star, and yet he and Tony were living in that dive, paying for a room by the week. Yeah, I know. In the beginning of the paragraph, he found out that he and Clarence were now living as a couple and had been evicted from their apartment. By the end of the same paragraph, it says, Bobby was a star, and yet he and Tony were living in that dive, paying for a room by the week. In trying to find Switch's belongings, I tracked down the apartment manager where Bobby and Tony had been evicted. I was told that rent had not been paid for 4 months and all of their belongings, including Switch's costumes, Bobby's and my ASCAP awards for R&B Songwriter of the Year, which had been awarded to us for co-writing I Call Your Name, had also been left and locked in the apartment and was not the property of the apartment owner. This really increased my anxiety, as in picking up an advance check from ASCAP, Bobby was given both plaques but never turned mine over to me. I offered to pay the past due money to get back what belonged to me, Switch and possibly Bobby's possessions, but the building manager had been too badly injured by the destruction of the apartment and Bobby's promises to make payments that never came. The apartment manager got downright nasty with me, abruptly saying no to my offer to pay the debt and told me to get the hell out of his building. I consulted my lawyer that day to see if there was anything I could do to retrieve my belongings, but was told that I had no recourse because Bobby's irresponsibility made the building manager's actions legal. So again, Switch lost more than $40,000 in stage costumes and miscellaneous stage equipment, and I never even got to see my ASCAP award. All right. Whew. That was the end of chapter 15. There are 2 chapters left, which will be chapter 16 and chapter 17. And they're both short chapters. Oh Lord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh Lord. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22 more pages left to the end of the book. All right. I'm going to try very hard to come back tomorrow night. Might be late afternoon, but I'm going to try and finish these last 22 pages before this weekend is out, and I think I can do it. So if I don't make it back tomorrow, I'll make it back Sunday, but I'm really going to try and get this over with because, after all, y'all deserve it. Thanks again. It's time for me to go. I have no idea what time it is. And yeah, it is. I've been reading for 3 hours. You're very welcome. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Peace.